when we started working with Ibogaine, I had a small Pentax SLR camera, and I knew that it's very important to document what we were doing. I didn't know that it would get us to where we are now. We just wanted to share with you the early days of the Ibogaine movement. We were all very, very poor. You know, there were times, like Howard and Norma and myself, we were living in New York. We had no food on the table. We were taking people for treatment with very low cost. We ended up with no money to live on. It was a very difficult economic period. Let me... maybe I'll start here. I'll stand here. Okay. This is with the squatters in Marconi Cafe in Amsterdam in 1989. We had a very good relationship with the squatters in Amsterdam, where many people had drug problems. And his name is Chris, right? Chris. A very colorful guy. All right, thank you. We were living in cheap hotels. This is a picture in Amsterdam. And this is Chris Schwartz. He was the leader, a very charismatic figure. He helped us a lot in Amsterdam at that period of time. This is Howard. As you can see, we went through periods of ups and downs. There was a lot of responsibility on our hands, taking people for treatment with no physicians attending. As you can see, these are the people we used to hang out with. Wonderful people by themselves, all trying to help. There we go. This guy's his name is Reinout. That's me in the corner. 30 years ago. Reinout and his wife, what's her name? Matilda. They helped us a lot as volunteers to do treatments in Leiden. We did a lot of treatments in Leiden. Marconi Radio was a pirate underground station where we did a lot of work to spread the word in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands. This is some other pictures. This is Simon Winkenoog, Dutch writer. I don't know if many of you know him, but he's famous. He also helped the movements, and his wife. We went to see him. This is Bob Sisko, Orion Hotel, which is basically maybe half-star hotel or 75% star hotel, one-star hotel. That's the first treatment that we did. You see in the background Hotel Orion in Rotterdam. So that's the first treatment. That's Norma again. Nico Adrias. He was the founder of the Dutch equivalent of ICASH, of the International Coalition for Addict Self-Help. Really a brilliant guy, was HIV positive, and he was a pioneer also in Holland with Ibogaine, but also he started distributing heroin to patients in a controlled environment. So Nico is no longer with us. This is in his house. Norma, this is in Rotterdam, 1990, with Gerta. She was on the left. She was a very courageous woman from Holland, and she did Ibogaine, and she helped us throughout the years. This is a close-up of that picture. Gerta. This is Professor Jan Bastians, the Dutch psychiatrist we talked about before. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. He was a Nazi resistant fighter. in the Netherlands in the Second World War. He won a Queen's Award for it. One of his okay, never mind. So and he was the first attending physician. Jan Bastian. This is where this is my corner in Rotterdam on the floor for weeks at a time at Gerte's house, where we did a number of treatments, and he came to Professor Bastians came to help us out and observe. This is an iboga shrub held by Howard. Every time you introduce the ibogaine alkaloid or a molecule into a room, the whole energy changes. It's really incredible. So that's the first car that we had in driving all around the Netherlands. And here is Deborah Mesh on the left. Deborah Mesh on the left and Sanchez Ramos from both of them from the University of Miami. They came to observe the first treatment. Oh, God. Never mind. It will stop in a second. Sorry about that. They came to observe the treatments that we've done. And this is cruising the streets of Amsterdam. There were days that, we did treatments. We were waiting for some other folks to come in. And this is actually how it looked in Leiden, a treatment room next to the, this is the observation room. See, the screens were very small. Of course, these are bad screens to do treatments with. You need much bigger screens. Usually, I personally believe that one person should be in the room with those who's doing the treatment, to be silent, to have the earplugs and the eye covers. So it's a self journey. It's not you should not interfere all the time how you're feeling, what you see, and so on. That's my personal. I know there are people from the psychiatric community who are very interested in processes that people go through during Ibogaine, but I find it that it's a little bit interfering. So just maintain the blood pressure and the pulse and see how they're doing, and ask them just every so often, are you okay? That's it. And usually they will tell you, I'm busy. Don't bother me too much. Cisco on the left, and this is the Dr. Udi Bastians in the center, and Sanchez Ramos, who's a neurologist. Sanchez Ramos ran the first approved FDA protocol in the United States, the University of Miami, he did the neurological tests. So this is a close-up of the of the monitors at the patient's room. So you see, it's very intense. This is the first scientist. His name is Jolich. That Howard gave him some ibogaine, says ran some tests on the mice, and to see how the reduction of morphine intake. That is 1990. This is in his clinic, in Jan Bastian's clinic. He treated LSD Holocaust survivors with PTSD. Of course, all Holocaust survivors have PTSD, but he is taking the route of treating them with LSD in the late 50s and early 60s. Really pioneering his field. This is in his clinic. So the first, no, it's not the first, but people we treated, we sent to see him. This is in his backyard. This is Howard again. This is his wife. In Belgium, we didn't know actually where to go. We wanted help. We needed help with the movement. So we went for this for commercial attaché in Belgium, from the American embassy. How you can help in this? So there were really, far-fetched attempts to whoever can save us, and help this issue forward, because we were like 3 or 4 or 5 people in the movement initially, and we didn't know what course of action. There was no money. We saw the benefits, and we didn't know how to proceed. This is and then the ABC did a show on Ibogaine. It was called Day One. They said, oh, these are a couple of guys in the Lower East Side saying they can save the world with this African shrub from, they must be a snake oil salesman or something, and well, let's do a story about them. Okay, so they chose three guys from the Lower East Side. This guy is a son of a butcher, a rabbi and a butcher. No? He was a butcher. Sorry, the rabbi was not a butcher. Sorry. And he was addicted to crack, right, and cocaine for a very long time. And so he's interviewed here, and this is like 91 or something,
I think J1 was, I think it was 92.
92. I'm not sure about the dates. And then the German TV came to interview us in Leiden. And the result of this interview, later on, a patient came from Germany. We'll talk about it later. Romel Washington from New York City. This is another gentleman that was addicted to methadone. That was followed out by the ABC News in Leiden. This is our dear Francisco. He is really a tremendous person, courageous and generous. This is a harm reduction. We went to harm reduction conferences. Harm reduction just was gaining hold. It was a new concept. Actually started in Liverpool with heroin distribution of needles and so on. So we started to introduce Ibogaine as a harm reduction tool to reduce the harm from drugs. This is in the Vite Hotel, again during the treatment in Leiden. This is in Amsterdam, in Novo Hotel, where we did a number of treatments. This is our dear beloved Howard again. We had good weed in Amsterdam, that's for sure, so it helped us through tough times. We went to AIDS conferences, yes, because AIDS was very rampant among IVDU drug users. This is the room that I took Ibogaine, 2 grams. Howard gave me. I said, "You're a redhead, you have a big mouth. I'll give you 2 grams and see where it takes you, So it was the most important experience of my life. It saved 10 years on the couch of the psychiatrist. And matured me. Many men are carrying things from childhood that they cannot resolve, and Ibogaine matures you rapidly, and it helps you distinguish between what's important and what's not important in life. And when you give it to a drug addict, Ibogaine, it helps them choose between life without drugs or to continue to use drugs. It gives you a way to choose clearly, and it's very beneficial. This is a Cisco's son, Noah, who came around. So these are pictures. This is a couple from Geneva that we treated. They were both addicted to heroin. This is another guy we treated. This is Hans George Baer. 24 hours after I took the 2 gram of HCl, which is a lot, we had a call from Hans George Baer, and since I was a driver in this blue Ibo mobile, Howard told me, "Boaz, we have to drive now to Bremen, where was this? Hamburg. We have to drive to Hamburg." So 24 hours after, a full dose, I got in the car, driving to Germany. Luckily, we ended up in good shape. We ended up in the red light district. Hans George Baer is a famous activist in Germany for cannabis and for Ibogaine. He's no longer with us as well. This is Howard and George. This is again Bob Cisco. We went to the FDA to say we have a solution for drug addiction. We were very naive. There was a lawyer. There was a lawyer there that came with us. This is in front of the FDA. This is the FDA meeting. Presented it to a panel. Actually, NIDA funded Ibogaine preclinical animal study by the sum of $5 million. So that was actually a wonderful result. And then they approved the phase 1 in the University of Miami, dose escalation for cocaine addicts. But the University of Miami and Dr. Mash and others, we couldn't pull through the money. So it stopped. This is Deborah Mash. She opened a clinic in St. Kitts and with Jeffrey Camelot, right? They treated over 400 people because they did very good screening. They didn't have any problems whatsoever. Deborah Mash, a very strong-minded woman, a very good scientist. This is in the same presentation. This is the Lower East Side hangout that we had in 3rd Street between C and D. Okay, in the basement. This is where people. Where's Dana? Is he up? Oh, this is where we used to hang out and meet the people who are about to be treated. The infinite joint. Cisco smokes 1 joint a day, but the whole day, like 1 joint at a time, the whole day. So I mean that's Norma and Howard shopping in Panama. We ended up in Panama. We hooked up with a bunch of doctors in the Panama hospital, and we started doing treatments in Panama. That was an adventure also. This is the HCL bringing to the University of Miami for the clinical trial. This is actually the box. Screening candidates for Ibogaine study. I'm on the left. They wanted non-naive. They wanted people who've taken Ibogaine already. Since I've taken Ibogaine, I was subject number 1. This guy's name is Stuart. So this is the study at the University of Miami. Due to lack of funds, they take urines, of course, a heart and everything, all the parameters, blood. Sanchez Ramos and Deborah Mash, and so this is Howard, University of Miami. So when I went into the study, they did psychiatric evaluation of me. Now I was in Leiden when the tragedy happened, when this German young lady came for treatment due to this interview in the German television, and she's taking heroin during the treatment. I mean, and she died. And because I was the medic, attending medic, I tried to resuscitate her for like 30 minutes until the ambulance arrived. And it turned out that I had a PTSD as well from this experience. We all had PTSDs. But I was evaluated in psychiatric screening. And it's very traumatic when you lose a patient, and for many years, I couldn't treat women. I just treated men. It was very difficult. Only in the last years, maybe I went back to taking care of doing treatments with women because of that trauma. We ended up in the police, and because Jan Bastians was the attending physician, and she was his patient. Then we got off the hook. Otherwise, we could have ended up in jail for years at a time. Like Sarah Glatt is in jail for someone who passed away in her apartment. So Ibogaine movement is always a part of a liberal, progressive, social change movement. We demonstrate for social causes. This is against mandatory minimum. Dana Beal is on the left, Howard and Bob Cisco. This is Dana Beal's son on the left, and Bob Cisco's son on the from Union Squares. This is Bill Counselor, a very famous American lawyer who helped the movement in different ways. Ibogaine testing now. That's what it says. This is Harlem. This is the Harlem demonstration. This is we're yeah, okay. We demonstrated against Canada treatments of the. It's a little radical, against to demonstrate like this against Canada because the way they treated the Indians, So we were very radical at that time. Repeal mandatory sentences. This is the trip to India, where I was asked to help the Indian drug problem. I was invited there, and we tried to build some protocols for India. The problem in India or in low-income countries is that the price of the medicine, they cannot afford it. They detox these guys with volumes, yes, which cost 10 volumes cost, I don't know, $50. And if you give them 1 gram of Ibogaine as a detox for $100, who's going to pay for it? So one of the tasks of the movement should be to lower the cost of the medicine as much as possible and bring to the fold, people who need treatment in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in India or in countries like this. I mean, we are here in the West, but I mean, there's a huge drug addiction problem around the world. That's the last slide. Thank you very much.
A quick Q&A.
Yeah, if you want to ask questions, please.
When you did the thank you.
I took Ibogaine before the incident.
I have a question,
Yes.
Boaz. It's a bit difficult to talk about, but the relationship between Howard and Deborah. I don't know if you'd like to.
You want to relate to this, Norma? No. It's a relationship that turned into a relationship, which is very. She sued us. There were issues of patents and nor-ibogaine, which is the metabolite, and she's coming from the pharma world and the / academic world, and for them to go into a drug means that they have to protect the molecule. And you go into a single molecule instead of a multi or poly molecules like with cannabis. I mean, if you take one molecule and you develop it, usually you'll fail. Yes, the toxicity profile changes. You need to prove it that it's safety from scratch from day one. So there was a fight on intellectual property, who found out what, and so forth. It was very sad to see because Howard and Norma and the group did not have a lot of money. We had to hire lawyers and defend and end up in court. And in retrospect, I mean, I knew it actually at the time that it was a waste of time and resources. And it ended up in a settlement, but the only one who got richer in the process are, of course, the lawyers, as is always the case.
Doug?
Yes, Doug.
New York.
Yeah.
What, if anything, is going on in Israel with Ibogaine?
In Israel, a few things. We were able to get the Ministry of Health in Israel to approve a protocol, a 12-patient heroin detox study to study the effectiveness of Ibogaine as a detox agent. Yes. So I shared that knowledge with a number of people here in Spain who are doing protocol designs and experiment. So there's an approved protocol. We couldn't pull it through. We didn't have the money. Yes. There's a scene, an underground scene, which I was a part of for a long time in Israel, where we did treatments in hotels and in apartments and so forth. Sometimes with a psychiatrist, a woman psychiatrist, sometimes without. I know there's an underground scene going on right now in Israel. There's one also in Greece. I mean, there are a number of countries that are not represented here. That there's treatment providers who are usually ex-drug abusers who've gone through the treatment and they started treating themselves. So, and they are not part of the, we try to build here responsibility on safety and so forth. These underground treatment providers, which I was part of and so forth, we cannot, nor do we want to control them, but they have to be supported. They have to come to the fold, into Gita, into all the Ibogaine organizations that are in and taught how to use safety and to introduce safety into the environment and use doctors and nurses and so forth.
Have there been any adverse events that you know of in Israel?
No, there hasn't been. And that's why I stopped also, after 100 treatments, or more or less, I stopped because there were no adverse effects. Eventually, it could be the statistics, catch up with you, yes? And it's very tiring. I had the hands-on treatment in the same room with someone who's gone through treatment, holding their hands, checking them all the time. And it's very tiring to go into a hotel room for 3 days, and clean their vomit and take them to the bathroom and so forth. And since I'm getting younger, it was too much for me.
We've got Paul Glue from the previous presentation. We've managed to make contact with him.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, let's have another question while we're going. The gentleman in the glasses there.
Howard was able to get into agreement with a Belgian company called, what was the name of the company, Norma? In Belgium? Omnicam. And they produced Ibogaine HCl for us. There was a British company. There is still, I think, a British company. Firth and something. That still produce good quality Ibogaine. Bob Cisco produces GMP Ibogaine in India. Yes. There's about 300 grams stash of Ibogaine or a GMP level that could be used in clinical trials made in India by a good Indian pharma company. And then there's some, Iboga as is coming from Gabon. Of course, all the organic source is coming either from Gabon or in Cameroon, mostly from Gabon. And then there's the TA that people use, which is whole plant extract that is used. So the movement has been torn always between the HCl, the hydrochloride Ibogaine, which gave you persistence, and you can do dosing, in a very, in a pharmaceutical definition. And the total alkaloid, the TA, total alkaloid that people used in ceremonies and so forth. The problem with the total alkaloid is you don't know how much you're getting, and it takes a lot of digestion and so forth. But it's been working in Africa for thousands of years, so. But we have a bias in the West for standardized dosing, so you can repeat it and study it. And so the movement has been torn between which is the best approach. I think both approaches have, of course, room to be used, but that's what I have to say.
But do you think it's possible? Would it be as easy to medicalize PTA as Ibogaine HCl?
It's very difficult to medicalize a total alkaloid because each plant is different. So you have to grow it indoors, like in the case of medical cannabis, you have to grow it indoors and start to stabilize it, which takes a long time and a complete environmental control. So if this will happen, then total alkaloid can be standardized to an extent, not to 100%. Yes?
I just wanted to mention, you referred yesterday to a group, I think probably a lot of people who are non-Americans don't know about, which is Americans for Safe Access.
Mm-hmm.
And they've actually done some amazing work on, classifying and standardizing different strains of cannabis. And I've actually spoken with Steph Scherer about applying this to Iboga and Iboga extracts, but unfortunately we haven't connected to move that ahead.
They are only a medical cannabis advocacy organization, the largest in the world, Americans for Safe Access. It's a wonderful organization started by Steph Scherer. And they are not going to, I think, deal with any anything else, but they have a model of patient-certified dispensaries and grow operations. So if we can bring this model into cannabis, into Ibogaine, so we have clinics that will be certified as humane, as compassionate, and as good clinical practice and so forth. So that will be a standard for new patients to see whether this clinic has been certified by previous patients or by Gita or by other organizations. I think that's very important for the introduction of safety standards across the Ibogaine movement.
One historical question, actually, Boaz. There was this big grand project you had at some point, which involved, was it a canal or can you tell a story of that?
No, I'm a peace activist. I'm an anti-occupation activist in Israel, anti-occupation of the Palestinians, you know. So I suffer from overdose of ideology, you know. I've not taken care of myself for many years, you know, my economic development, even though I have a master's in this and that, and I'm a certified clinical research manager. I could have made more money, you know, elsewhere. But you can be an activist when you have no dime on your table, and you can be an activist when you are, you know, half a millionaire. It's a matter of your dedication, how to increase the good in the world and to better this world. So I did a lot of activities on different areas in peace and water and Ibogaine and medical cannabis. If anybody wants to talk about medical cannabis, I can help. Israel has a wonderful medical cannabis program with 30,000 patients. And I help other countries start medical cannabis programs as much as I can.
Okay, so you're not going to talk about it?
No.
Another?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Many people don't want to be, you know, I mean, they got married. They don't want somebody who treated them as a drug addict. Maybe they didn't tell the partners they were former drug abusers, and they don't want to talk to you. You know, and I don't have the capacity to do a good follow-up. This has to be done in a clinical by a clinician who's done the treatment and provided. I just want to say as a last word, I mean, the movement could benefit greatly now from the ability to have a long-term follow-up on the internet. There are psychologists and psychiatrists who can sit at home. They don't have to travel anywhere. I mean, this individual who has been treated with Ibogaine could have a long-term follow-up on the internet by counselors. I mean, this option was not available until the last few years. And if we talk about improving the efficacy of the of Ibogaine treatment, this is an option for, I don't know, $40 or $50 to have online counseling. I think this is the future that we talked about the future yesterday, that the movement should go to and have a pool of counselors specializing with Ibogaine treatment and people who've gone through the treatment to be helped by this technology. I think that's very important. And I know there are some psychologists here. Do we have any psychologists on the crowd? 1, 2, you see? How many? 4? Psychiatrists? How many psychiatrists do we have on the crowd? Okay. Anybody using drugs? No, I'm joking. So if some of you could, you know, organize such a thing, you know, get a pool of counselors, you know, have a list that people can call, and you have experience with Ibogaine treatments, you know, and then spread it in Gita or post it the Gita website so they can call you and have online post-treatment counseling. I think that could be very helpful.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to talk about it maybe later during the break. We're going to make some lists for that. I know the Wachtel Foundation was talking about maybe, you know, women of Ibogaine and also the therapists, so we can all find each other, so we can research to each other. Because, you know, we're by ourselves, and in our field, you know, we want other people to help us.
Right.
So we have a final question from the gentleman.
I would like to ask the audience, it's very important that doctors and journalists, for instance, they have to make credits each year. I am a journalist, so I have sometimes, and the doctors too. Do you organize credits for this conference? Because it would be very interesting to make it next time if you don't. these
continuing
skilling credits for doctors, making mandatory courses in the course of the years. So next conference should be possible to get these permits given to the professionals, because that's a point which is very important for the medical staff and also for journalists.
For sure. We tried to do that for this conference, but it didn't quite work out. But definitely for the next conference, yeah. Okay, so we couldn't re-establish contact with Dr. Glue, unfortunately. It's very late in New Zealand at the moment, so maybe he fell asleep. So we're going to break for lunch. We're supposed to start again at 1 o'clock, but let's make it 1:30. So an hour.